based on the account. Now, let's be perfectly clear. I don't really believe they've figured out what's happening yet. There's a lot of strange happening with this situation. I know this person, first of all. How did he manage to get onto the rooftop? Why was nobody watching? Why was nobody like there's a clear visual line between where he's positioned and those rooftops? You people didn't verify. You don't have an unmanned aerial vehicle. That's unbelievable. This is leading nowhere. It simply isn't. Erica Kirk did something nobody anticipated. She spoke out, but not with rage, but with the demeanor of someone who recognized the strength of tranquility. Have you ever witnessed someone get entangled in a gossip cyclone? So much so that it not only exploded across social platforms, but divided the digital realm in two. That's precisely what occurred when Joe Rogan, yes, that Joe Rogan, decided to reference Erica Kirk. And then everything shifted. I wish I was a police officer. I'd sit in there like this tale is nonsense. Like in one of these, none of these elements make any logical sense to me. And now the tide of public sentiment hasn't subsided. On the contrary, it's intensifying. See, Joe wasn't merely discussing Erica. He displayed a half grin, gentle but calculated, a seemingly innocent observation. But when it landed, it pierced like a strike against trust. And though Joe didn't specify a name, we all understood who he was alluding to. The genuine question was, did he overstep or was he merely expressing what others were hesitant to acknowledge? The official explanation was it was an old family keepsake, an object with no serial number, no origin. It sounded innocent. But then Joe paused, lifted an eyebrow, and stated, "I don't believe Erica Kirk is entirely blameless." That was all. The world erupted. Social networks ignited. People began discussing, circulating, editing, and losing all sense of composure. Let's go back a little. It all began with a typical recording of the Joe Rogan experience. A midweek broadcast. No special promotions, just a lengthy, meandering dialogue about politics, about how people manipulate facts, and about topics no one dares to voice publicly. Then suddenly, Joe delivered a brief statement sufficient to alter everything. If you want people to lose all confidence that anyone is going to resolve anything, you add a bunch of "you're going to eliminate God." You got a bunch of other bizarre that doesn't make any sense, and you broadcast it out there simultaneously. In that instant, everything transformed. No clarification, no retraction, just a pause, a lengthy, profound breath enough to make audiences question, does he know more than he's revealing? From that point, the audience exploded. TikTok creators slowed down the segment, added dramatic background music, magnified Joe's face as if they were cracking a secret code. In a matter of hours, the one passing remark became the internet's focal point. One faction believed Joe was concealing something. The other claimed he had gone too far. But one thing was undeniable. Joe Rogan had just transformed a woman's personal tragedy into the largest controversy social media had ever witnessed. In just a few hours, a brief statement became an online fixation. People divided, debated, argued until they were drained. Some insisted that Joe Rogan was courageous enough to say what no one else dared to voice. Others argued he had crossed a boundary, exploiting someone else's suffering to create a public spectacle. But one thing was certain. Joe Rogan had turned Erica Kirk's private sorrow into a public exhibition. And if you considered that was harsh, it was even more severe, because Rogan's comment wasn't an accident. It was a technique, a strategy he's employed for years. The composed look, the slow inhalation, the extended pause before speaking. That's Joe's arsenal. He didn't need to yell. He simply planted a seed of uncertainty in people's minds and then let the world cultivate it. And this time the seed germinated. It developed momentum. It developed sharp edges. Rogan's followers, the self-appointed truth pursuers, treated his every utterance like gospel. Overnight, every section of Twitter and Reddit became an investigative hub. People started unearthing old clips, freezing the memorial service, that young man on the cross. Our Redeemer said, "Father, pardon them, for they not know what they do." That young man, I pardon him. Analyzing Erica's tone at charity functions, even scrutinizing her hand gestures as if decoding a secret signal. A vague remark became a whirlwind of gossip. And in the center of the controversy, Erica Kirk. Things became unhinged. Some claimed her grief appeared too flawless, that her speech sounded rehearsed, as if she wasn't in anguish but performing. People say she was coached to weep at the appropriate moment. that every tear, every breath was orchestrated. Some even asserted no one can control emotions like that unless they've rehearsed. And then he blinked. He blinked and saw High's savior in heaven, and then in an instant, a fleeting frame was extracted, enlarged, decelerated, and someone remarked, "She's gazing upward like she's performing." The comments spread rapidly. Within 2 minutes, you couldn't browse through any platform without encountering an image of Joe Rogan's half-smile. Beneath that dramatic caption, he recognizes this isn't information, this is entertainment. Every tear Erika cried became proof. Every hesitation she made became a warning sign. And while Rogan sat comfortably in the studio drinking coffee and accumulating millions of views, Erica Kirk was being analyzed in quiet. A photograph, a post, a rumor, each dissected and exaggerated, became investigative material for the masses. If you've ever witnessed the internet turn against someone, you understand how brutal it can be. One moment they call you an inspirational figure. The next moment they transform you into an antagonist. Erica Kirk, once applauded for her poise, for her gentle smile under pressure, suddenly became the internet's favorite villain. That same composure, once perceived as a symbol of fortitude, is now viewed as evidence of indifference. To many, she's too composed to be genuinely sorrowful. They claimed she was capitalizing on her husband's death or converting thestery into a publicity stunt. And then they circulated a clip from the funeral. Her words resonated through the weeping of the congregation. And now his purpose is my purpose. Everything Turning Point USA established through Charlie's vision and dedication. We will expand tenfold through the strength of his memory. It was a sincere moment, but the internet doesn't permit authenticity to endure long. The clips were slowed down, dimmed, divided into numerous versions with solemn music. Every blink became a hidden message. Every breath became concealed evidence. People no longer viewed funerals as farewells. They perceived them as detective films with Erika as the protagonist. Even her faith, the only thing she'd remaining, was being distorted. They accused her of using her beliefs as ad offense. They ridiculed her Bible verses as public relations tactics. And in all that commotion, Erika selected Sue. Erika chose quietude. No declarations, no explanations, no exclusive interviews, no live streams of counter-arguments, just silence, which in their realm of social media was the most deafening sound. Her silence drove people even more frantic. They couldn't tolerate not having an answer. Because when one person said nothing, everyone else would compose the narrative for them. And that was when the controversy reached its zenith. Because in the perception of the crowd, silence was no longer restraint. It was admission. Every second Erika remained motionless was every second someone else added a new conspiracy theory. But what the internet fails to comprehend is this. Sometimes silence isn't evasion. It's a tactic. It's the only method to regain authority in a world that's eager to tear your genuine emotions apart. And then when everything seemed to have reached a critical point, when the clamor from millions of comments, hundreds of podcasts, thousands of reaction videos had escalated to a boiling point. This will endure. The team is maintaining this because we have Charlie within each and every one of us. Erica Kirk finally spoke. She didn't release a press statement. She didn't appear on a talk program. She didn't hire a lawyer or a media specialist. She just uploaded a 6-minute video so simple it was almost peculiar. A single title, sufficient. No elaborate setting. No stage illumination. Just her, a camera, and millions of people holding their breath waiting to hear what she would say. And then she spoke. Her voice was low, rough, not trembling at all. What I wish to convey today is straightforward. Charlie's program will not cease. His voice will persist through us. That was all. Just a few phrases. But they halted the world. She didn't reference Joe Rogan. No rebuttal, no accusation, no blame, and she didn't need to. Everyone knew who she was addressing. Then she continued more deliberately this time. Each word measured in breath. The program will continue. This team will keep the flame burning because Charlie remains within each of us. The manner she said it, the way her eyes held the camera was sufficient for the viewer to understand. Erica Kirk wasn't departing. She was remaining. Not just to continue her deceased husband's work, but to reclaim her own narrative. And now his purpose is my purpose. Everything. That Turning Point USA constructed through Charlie's vision and diligence. We will make 10 times larger through the force of his memory. Each word she uttered sounded like a needle, piece by piece, mending the dignity that had been shredded by the mob. And within minutes, social media reversed direction. The hashtag support, Erika flooded the timeline. Tens of thousands of people began redistributing the video, writing things like, "She finally spoke up and in the most elegant manner possible." Well, it's going to be quite a Tuesday for us, folks. Where should we commence? I'll tell you this. Something is amiss. Political concern of the day is what is occurring currently in the world and what just happened to my associate. Charlie Kirk is a conflict of pure evil versus virtue. Candace Owens described it as a moment of genuine bravery. Tucker Carlson redistributed the segment, writing, "This is what grace resembles amidst media fire." But on the opposing side, Rogan's dedicated followers refused to yield. They ridiculed the video, calling it a meticulously orchestrated performance or an Oscar-worthy act, and so the internet divided in two again. But this time, Erika was the one directing the situation. In a matter of minutes, the woman who had been branded cold, unfeeling, exploiting a tragedy, had reversed the situation. She didn't yell. She didn't threaten. She didn't become defensive. She illuminated the room without elevating her voice. That was the moment the entire story transformed. Because for the first time since the incident, Erika was no longer the subject of the discussion, she was the one leading it. The words she spoke, few but adequate, sounded like a new declaration. That composure was not weakness, and silence was not capitulation. Erika did not retaliate with fury. She retaliated with command. Command of her emotions, command of the narrative, and above all, command of what others thought of her. In the following hours, the enough video reached tens of millions of views. News outlets that had once been doubtful changed their stance. Editors examined her every expression with a rare admiration. Erica Kirk, the woman consumed by the internet, had left the internet speechless. A few days later, the atmosphere on social media resembled a digital civil war. The timeline was no longer a place to share information. It was a battlefield. One side insisted that Joe Rogan had crossed a moral boundary, that he was no longer a host, but an instigator of an assault on someone else's suffering. The other side just as fervently claimed that Erica Kirk was a master of public presentation, that she had transformed pain into a branding approach. Both sides discussed truth, but in actuality, no one was seeking it anymore. What they were seeking was emotion to rage, to speak up, to fight. Every video, every tweet, every new podcast released was like a shot in a battle no one was truly winning. The major news sources were clearly divided. Some publications have supported Erika, describing her as a strong woman who stands up. Others have embraced Rogan, calling her social media's new influential figure. Blogs have exploited the situation. They have written headlines that are purely emotional. Can sorrow be content? Erica Kirk, from widow to icon. Talk shows have turned the topic into an industry. They've brought in body language specialists, public psychologists, and even digital ethicists, people who discuss much about empathy, but really just want more views. You can almost hear the click of new headlines being composed, new thumbnails being edited, and news scripts being prepared to continue exploiting a woman's pain. Meanwhile, Erika vanished. G vanished. No new posts, no interviews, no official announcements, no sign. The final post on her account was just a Bible verse. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. The words were a whisper, tiny in the world's noisy storm, and then she was gone. Truly gone. No one knew where she was, but her absence was the most powerful presence. Her one brief phrase spread across the internet like a ghost. No one could ignore it. It hovered in the minds of millions. Why are you silent? What are you concealing? Or simply, are you in pain? And so the second storm began. If you think online outrage is about compassion, you're mistaken. On the internet, empathy is content. People aren't seeking healing. They're seeking a spectacle, a tragedy to discuss, a tear to edit, a character to love or despise. Rogan's podcast soared to millions of views. Erika's enough video became the most viewed post on X that week. Suddenly, everyone became a critic. Worse, many became commentators. Thousands of reaction videos were posted in a few days. Some weeping, some laughing, some mocking, some praying. Each person used Erika's pain to create their own content for views, for fame, for algorithms. It wasn't grief anymore. It was chaos disguised as compassion. The hosts simulated concern, debating whether Rogan should apologize, all while replaying Erica's tear-stained face between two brand commercials. Psychologists lined up on the airwaves, each confidently interpreting her body language, discussing avoided gazes, suppressed gestures, as if they had the right to interpret other people's sadness. And they all forgot one thing. Behind the frames, there was a real person suffering. In the days that followed, it felt like a grand social experiment. Hundreds of writers, commentators, and self-proclaimed experts were producing think pieces, insights with titles that sounded profound. The story of Charlie Kirk and digital life after he was gone. They tried to sound knowledgeable, told themselves to sound like they had discovered a truth. But in reality, they were just feeding the same monster. The monster called attention. Every line of text, every video, every emotional analysis podcast only made the monster larger, more aggressive because it doesn't feed on facts. It feeds on views. Then, as the noise subsided, as people began to find new topics to argue about, Erica Kirk, the woman consumed by the crowd, suddenly returned. Not with a media campaign, not with ad offense, just with a breathless statement. There is no guide to sorrow. There is no roadmap, no linear plan for loss. That was it. But the world reacted intensely. Half the internet insisted she was responding to Joe Rogan, that it was the most subtle counterattack ever. The rest said she was targeting the media, forcing them to examine how they had turned grief into entertainment. Some said it was a farewell. Others insisted it was a rebirth. A few writers call it the silent revenge of a woman who was misunderstood. Within hours, the hashtag We Support Erika was everywhere. It was trending for 2 days consecutively. At times, even Rogan's supporters were startled, accepting that perhaps this time he had met his match. But Joe Rogan didn't respond. No apology, no rebuttal, just silence. And oddly enough, the silence was loud. That's when I realized Erica Kirk didn't win because she was superior, but because she refused to play by his rules. She didn't scream. She didn't get angry. She didn't pursue every click. Whenever the internet demanded drama, she responded with silence. Whenever Rogan dropped the hint, she just smiled. And that composure gradually cost him the advantage. More and more, Rogan's comment section was filled with her name. Fans began to mock his silence. Critics who once praised him now call him a man who talks big but has nothing left to say. Meanwhile, overnight, Erika doubled her followers. The video enough is still trending. Here Right Word tweet is referenced in dozens of articles as a lesson in control and restraint. He'd always conclude by asking, "Please let me know how I can better serve you as a husband." Erika doesn't need to win the argument because she has become the argument. And at this point, the story is no longer about Erika or Rogan. It's about us, the audience, the people sitting behind the screen, applauding, judging, getting angry, pitying, and then forgetting. We have transformed real human pain into a plot for entertainment. We have turned natural curiosity into the sharpest weapon of the digital age. The truth no longer matters. Just choose sides. Erika, the face of loss. Rogan, the symbol of doubt, and the rest of us, the crowd feeding the fire with our clicks. And when all the noise subsides, a cold question remains. Who truly owns the truth? The one who speaks loudest or the one patient enough to remain silent, letting the world compose its own version? Erika chose the latter, and that made her not only survive the storm, but become the one who halted it. Critics, fans, opportunists, all of them exposed themselves. Some were angry, some pied, some just wanted a moment of attention. Meanwhile, Erika chose the path less traveled. The less she said, the stronger she became. That's when I understood her few words. Her forgiveness were not a surrender. It was a strategy. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they are doing. That man, that young man, I forgive him. Those words were not an act. They seemed to come from a place beyond anger and hurt. And so I promise you today, every part of our work will become greater. I'm tremendously honored to be the new CEO of Turning Point USA. There were no tears, no resentment, just silence. And in that silence, power. Erika did not attempt to avoid Joe Rogan. She deprived him. Deprived of the noise, deprived of the chaos he once fed, deprived of a media system accustomed to living on controversy. She didn't need to scream. She didn't need to return anger. She didn't need to name anyone. She didn't drag anyone down. She didn't cry for mercy. Everything she did was deliberate, from the way she remained silent to the way she appeared at the right time to say just enough and then withdrew. It wasn't a reaction. It was a plan. By refusing to step into the storm, Erika made the world spin on itself. And she standing in the center, calm, slow, and almost detached. Every pause, every photo, every tiny share became its own headline. Without fighting, she makes others explain her, defend her, or attack her while she herself does nothing. She has made silence the purest weapon, a kind of power that social media, noisy, hasty, and thirsty for buzz, can never comprehend. That line, "You can't win when people love to see you fall," isn't a lament. It's a declaration. It's not closure, it's control. Because in that moment, Erica Kirk wasn't just addressing her critics, but the entire media machine that had once made a spectacle of her pain. She wasn't begging for understanding. She was forcing them to examine themselves. She called them all out, not verbally, but implicitly. Joe Rogan, the tabloids, the podcasters eager to unearth truth, the fans who had once called themselves guardians of justice. Each of them had once fueled the fire of her loss. But Erika didn't remain silent to hide from them. She stayed silent to redefine them. She didn't shut out the noise. She framed it. She turned ambiguity into a weapon, turned the mystery around her into armor. Her silence, both when it appeared and when it disappeared, was sharper than any response. It made those who shouted the loudest stop and listen. Joe Rogan, who had built an empire on talking more than anyone else, lost his voice for the first time. Not because he was blocked, but because he had nothing left to say. And Erika, the woman who didn't need an empire to stand on, created her own just by being calm. Then at the ceremony afterward, she stood on the stage of Turning Point USA, soft light falling on her composed face. Her voice resonated, clear, gentle, without emphasis. "I promise you today, every part of our work will be greater. I am deeply honored to be the new CEO of Turning Point USA. No tears, no anger, just the power of composure." Erica Kirk didn't defeat Joe Rogan with rage. She defeated him by redefining him, placing him in the same category with all those who'd ever viewed her as a content tool, diminishing his power to what it truly was, just noise. She turned restraint into rebellion, turned silence into language, and somehow, without ever raising her voice, she made her sound resonate beyond his platform. It was something no one anticipated. The turning point no headline could have predicted. While others screamed for attention, Erika chose to outlast the noise. And by saying just enough, she had the final word. And perhaps this is the greatest lesson of all, that sometimes power lies not in the voice, but in the ability to choose when to speak and when to bustle it. Erica Kirk didn't need to shout to be heard. She simply stopped and the world was forced to be silent with her. So, what do you think? Is silence weakness or the most subtle form of power a human can wield? Share your thoughts below. And if you want to continue discovering stories where power, fame, and human emotions collide, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next stories only at the Royal Spotlight.